Last week, our guest talked about how a new generation of priests and bishops is revitalizing the Catholic Church. Tonight, you will meet a bishop and his vocation director from one of the dioceses we referred to. Stay with us to learn the lessons of their success. Thank you. I know you all are interested in how Father Mitch is doing. I spoke with him this morning, and he wanted me to tell you how much he appreciates your prayers for him. He learned the good news that there has been very minimal damage to his heart, and he told me that he's getting stronger and taking a walk around the block a couple times a day. He told me that one of his Jesuit classmates said that obviously he is getting help from Mother Angelica. And Mother probably said, "Look, I've only been here up here a couple of weeks. Can I please have some peace and quiet for a little longer?" And so Father Mitch improved. And he told me that that was a former classmate who actually liked him. But please keep Father Mitch in your prayers. As you can tell, he still has his sense of humor, and we hope to see him back soon. On last week's program, we had on a sociologist, Anne Hendershot, who talked about her recent book titled Renewal, how a new generation of faithful priests and bishops is revitalizing the Catholic Church. And one of the places that she and I talked about is Lincoln, Nebraska. And so I'm delighted to have on the program tonight Bishop James Conley, the Bishop of Lincoln, and Father Robert Matya, the vocation director for the diocese and pastor of the Newman Center at the University of Nebraska. We will be talking about what they see as the reasons for their abundance of vocations to the priesthood and religious life, as well as to strong Catholic marriages and family life. So please welcome Bishop Conley and Father Matya. So it really worked out, as we were talking about early, that this is a segue from our last program of how there's a revitalization happening in places. And we're grateful that you could come to talk about Lincoln, Nebraska. Now this morning at the homily and the televised Mass, you talked about the importance of campus ministry to your own vocation and conversion to the Catholic Church. Tell us about that.
Right, Father Joseph. In my own life, I converted during my undergraduate years in college when I was at the University of Kansas. And I grew up in the Presbyterian Church, and when I came to the university, I had the providential fortune of enrolling in a program of integrated humanities. It was called the Integrated Humanities Program. And it was during those years, my junior year to be exact, is when I became a Catholic and discovered the Catholic Church, the truth, the goodness, and the beauty of the Catholic Church through literature and poetry and music and art. And it was during those years in college that I saw how important it was, for there be someone or something there to direct college students. So as my life progressed and discerned a vocation to the priesthood, was eventually ordained in 1985, I've ended up spending most of my priesthood in campus ministry of one sort or another. At the University of Dallas, at the Rome campus for 6.5 years, and then at Wichita State University in my home diocese of Wichita, and now back as the Bishop of Lincoln, very involved in the Newman Center at the University of Nebraska. So from my own experience, I saw the great need for the church to be where students are, because 90% of college-age Catholics are at public universities, like the one I went to, the University of Kansas. Right. And so I think that we need to channel our energies and our resources toward so many of those students who, during those college years, oftentimes leave the faith.
Right.
And so I really have a passion for campus ministry and for reaching out to students during those years, those important years, because they make these decisions which shape the rest of their lives, both good and bad decisions.
And there's a lot of negative influences, obviously, on the college campuses today, especially a secular college campus. So there's really a great need for the church to be there when these people, these young people, are trying to figure out the future of their life, and they're making, like you said, life-changing decisions.
Exactly. And it's we know how secular the university culture can be and how threatening it can be to the faith. And oftentimes, students begin to stray during their college years. So, especially at big public universities, the Newman centers, like the one at the University of Nebraska, and there are many all over the country, have really a vital role to play, I think, today, more than ever.
Right. Father Matya, you and I were at St. Charles together, lived on the same floor. You were a couple of years behind me. And I think most of your priesthood, you've been involved in vocational work.
It's true. Right? I've been, for the 20 years of my priesthood, 18 have been as chaplain at the Newman Center and vocation director for the diocese. So I've been there for a while.
So like we said earlier, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So they've kept you in that role because you've been very successful. Talk about what brought about a change in the Newman Center when you were there initially to how it is operating today.
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to. When I came, we had 2 masses on Sunday. We had a decent, good facility. The masses were about half full, which means there were probably about 400 students coming to Mass on Sunday. And I knew that there were a lot more Catholic students out on campus, like 6,000 at least. So I just was praying about it and asking God to show me, what to do, because I knew we had to do something much more proactive to reach those students. And it was just at that time when I was praying that I actually got a letter in the mail from Scott Hahn introducing a new ministry called Focus. It was in the very early stages of that ministry, Fellowship of Catholic University Students, started by Curtis Martin. So I called Curtis within a few weeks, and he came that fall for a visit. And the next year we had a team of 4 missionaries who started that program on our campus. And so they've been there for 17 years now. We actually have a team of 10 missionaries that work on our campus now. And gradually there's just been continual growth where we've added masses and Bible studies and just a much larger presence of students at the center.
How many students would there be generally, and how many of those would be Catholic?
There's about 24,000 students at the university, and approximately at least 25% self-identify as being Catholic, and some probably don't identify. So we know at least 25% would be Catholic.
So this has brought a real revitalization on the college campus among the Catholic students.
It has. Our masses were growing to the point, which we'll get to. I know we're going to talk about our church, but that they were full, standing room only. And so it was just, it's a beautiful ministry in the sense that it works for a number of reasons. The missionaries themselves are just out of college, and so they're very close in age to the students. And so when the students see these missionaries who are giving their lives to this, and they're 2 years of their life and raising their own salary to do it, and have such conviction about it, they become curious, and they are attracted to that. And it is a game changer, I would say, definitely.
So it's more of a peer-to-peer
relational ministry. Absolutely. We talk and focus about incarnational evangelization, being present to those students, investing their lives in them, and spending time with them, becoming their friend first, and then sharing the good news of the gospel, discipling them and growing in their faith. It's a walk with them, as Pope Francis likes to talk about.
Yes. When I had Father Barron, now Bishop Barron, on the program a couple of years ago, and he was the rector at Mundelein at the time, and he was saying we really have to form the priests in a new way, that they're going into a pagan culture.
Right.
They really have to see themselves as missionaries.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that the college students have to have that attitude too, that they are missionaries going into a pagan culture often.
They do. And that's the beautiful part of Focus, is that the missionaries actually raise up student leaders who begin leading their own Bible studies. And then by the time they're ready to graduate, several of them in course want to become missionaries themselves. And so that's a beautiful part of our story that I just really would like to share, because we've had 114 students who have graduated from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln who have become missionaries and have been missionaries and serving in schools all the way from California to New York.
Wow.
And so to watch that happen and see that spread and see how our students from our campus are going out literally all over the country and serving as missionaries on all these other campuses is just really beautiful.
So they are formed there on that campus, but then they have a formation that they become missionaries after graduation.
During the summer months.
Going to other campuses.
During the summer months.
Now, would they know where they're going, or they're sent out? Or?
You know, they truly are missionaries because they don't choose which campus they go to. They're actually sent, they're assigned to where they're going to serve. And so they find out usually about the first week of training, at the end of that first week, where they're assigned to go. And it's a big celebration. And when they find out, and they're matching up with their teams, and it's a pretty fun experience to watch that happen.
Now, I know, Bishop Conley, that we had a video. There was a Eucharistic procession that was going on. And you were part of that. Do you enjoy working with young people? Obviously, you've been in campus ministry, much of your own vocation.
Sure, and that's one of the events we have in the fall every year is a Eucharistic procession through the campus of the university. And I've had it the last couple of years, I think, that I've been able to be free to lead the procession. And it's a wonderful, wonderful experience because we really just take the Lord literally through the campus, and we stop at the football stadium, which is the other shrine on campus.
Yes.
We got the Newman Center and the football stadium, and then
the Cornhuskers.
the Go Huskers. And then we stop at the Student Union, and we go right down the fraternity and sorority street there, and we have altars set up, and everybody carrying candles, and it's just a beautiful expression of public faith. And it's amazing to watch the other students on campus see this. They all stop and they wonder, what are those Catholics up to? And it's just a beautiful thing, and it's a beautiful expression of faith.
And our viewers are watching some of that right now, the video that you have. There's a lot of students involved in that procession, so they take
what do
part.
we usually?
400 or 500 usually. go.
Really?
Yeah, in the procession.
Wow, that's a huge Eucharistic procession.
It's a fun event too, because one year, in fact, we were going past this front of the sorority house, and the girl opened the door, and she saw us coming, and she slammed the door shut, and she said, "You guys have to come see what the Catholics are doing." Yeah.
So
and we've actually had converts who've their first contact with the church is watching that procession.
Really?
Or encountering it, who've become Catholics. So.
We also have what we call Night Fever, which was taken from World Youth Day, where we expose the Blessed Sacrament in our new church, beautiful new church, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And we turn the lights off and have beautiful sung music by the Schola and the choir. And then we put candles out in the sanctuary. And then the students go out 2 by 2, and they go gather people from the campus to come in and pray for peace, to pray for someone who's sick, just Catholics, non-Catholics, whoever's in the streets, and just to sit there before the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament and pray. And it's amazing what happens. And there's priests in the back in case somebody wants to go to confession, or just talk to a priest. And we've done that, 3 times now, I think, since we built the new church.
I think we Catholics have been too shy about reaching out to others, inviting them. And that's something that you're trying to initiate, to get young people involved. And why not just come to the church here and just pray for someone? We need to be more outgoing, I think, as Catholics, right?
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah, to be bold.
Yes.
Now talk about the need for a larger church. You recently, a year ago, Divine Mercy Sunday, 2015, completed this beautiful church. Why was there the need for a larger church?
Well, with the growth of the students coming to Mass, and we added times, but we were having several times this experience of being standing room only in the chapel. And I'd be in the back getting ready to come in for the procession. I'd see students come in, and they'd see how full it was, how packed, and they'd literally turn and walk out. And it was really frustrating to see that. And I thought, if we have these students who are trying to come to Mass, and they're getting frustrated because there's not room for them, we have a problem. I mean, we have to address this. And so at first we started on a plan to kind of renovate our existing chapel and make it bigger. Went through that whole process with an architect, and then our diocesan building commission at the time said that's probably not a good idea to sink that kind of money into that building, and they recommended that we actually knock it down and start over, and our jaws dropped because we didn't expect that to come. And then when that happened, we saw an opportunity to do something that would just be beautiful in a way that would attract students, the importance of showing them beauty in the church, that being their first encounter. And so we spent a lot of time working with 2 architects on the project. It's not pure Gothic, but it's really kind of an English Gothic style. Often you'll see the large stained glass window in the back of in the sanctuary, which ours has. In fact, it's the largest stained glass window that's been built or put together, a composite window in America in the last 100 years. Wow. We call it Christ in the Heavenly Court. And so Christ is seated on the throne with Newman, our patron, and St. Thomas Aquinas, our other patron on each side, and all these saints that relate to college students. And it's been very well received.
It's magnificent. That stained glass window is beautiful. Talk about the significance of the saints that you chose for the windows there. I thought you have some beautiful connections with college students.
We did. In that center window, of course, we have Thomas and Newman, as I said. We have Albert the Great, Thomas's teacher, appropriate for a university setting. Therese, who's patroness of focused missionary work.
Oh, okay.
John Paul II and St. Faustina, we call that the mercy panel of the window. Our Blessed Mother, St. Joseph, St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, Sacred Heart. She's there adoring our Lord.
Blessed Georgia Frassati for youth.
Yep.
Right.
And Maria Goretti. Wanted to show our people that there's young people in heaven. Thought it was important to communicate that message. And then the windows along the nave are in pairs. And since, I talked about this with Focus about how it's incarnational and relational, we want all those windows to show a relationship. And so, for example, some of them are in, not all of them. We've got a ways to go on that. But Francis and Claire are together. I told you this morning we put them up close to the sanctuary because of their great devotion and love for the Eucharist. And then you have Andrew and Peter. Andrew's the first one with Peter to the encounter with our Lord. And St. Paul and St. Timothy. Timothy was his disciple. And other relationships as well. Benedict and Scholastica, brother and sister saints. Tobiah and Sarah. We have a lot of weddings now at the Newman Center. So,
now, Bishop Conley, why is it important not just to have a functional building, but to have something that's beautiful?
Well, that's been sort of a theme throughout the whole project, is the idea that beauty attracts. And of the 3 great transcendentals of truth, goodness, and beauty, in many ways in our culture, and again, Bishop Barron talks about this, is that truth has been compromised by relativism. And goodness, people are a little bit leery of that because you're being judgmental if you're saying this person is good or that person is not good. But beauty seems to transcend both of those, and beauty still has the power to attract. So one of the ideas in building a beautiful church was to attract people through beauty. And not only just the architecture and the physical beauty of the church, but also the beauty of the mind. So we've established this Newman Institute for Catholic Thought and Culture, which is an undergraduate program, much like the program I was in at the University of Kansas in the great books, the humanities, to introduce students to the beauty of our Catholic tradition and to introduce students to the great works of Western culture, all the way going all the way back to the Greeks and through to the moderns. And that was one of the things when I came to the Diocese of Lincoln. I saw that one of the things that maybe perhaps was missing at Newman Centers was this intellectual component, because they're getting all these ideas, not very good ideas sometimes, in their classes at the university, and they can't integrate those into their Catholic faith, and especially if they're majoring in all different kinds of degrees, that they don't have an opportunity to really be immersed in the great ideas of Western culture. So the beauty of the mind, the beauty of the church, the beauty of the liturgy, that's one of the things too that we really want to emphasize in the church, is to celebrate the sacred mysteries in a very dignified and beautiful way. And when we were building the church, the students, Father Matya, canvassed the students to see what kind of church do you want. And it's amazing what they ended up saying.
Yeah. For example, the first thing, which we never would have guessed, they asked for a communion rail that they could receive.
They wanted to receive kneeling.
The Eucharist by kneeling in front, and all kinds of things. Beautiful art, beautiful stained glass. These are the things that they were asking for. What kind of art they were asking? What kind of architecture will it be? These were, and because their world is moving so quickly. Yeah. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier today. I had 2 students who were looking at a picture of a BlackBerry and they were laughing because it looked so antiquated to them. We all remember using them not that long ago.
That's right.
But to them that's old. And so I think showing something that's can come down through the ages is something they can grasp onto and hold on to. That's not going to change in 2 years. Stability.
Right. The permanent things.
They want that. They're longing for that.
Yeah.
So
And they, in a certain sense, they feel deprived of that they've been robbed of these cultural treasures that have been perennial in every generation up until ours.
Right.
And so that's one of the things we want to do, is restore some of those beautiful treasures that they automatically resonate towards. I mean, they see it, they see the beauty of it, they're attracted to it, and they want it.
And we all want a sense of the sacred, right? If we're going to pray, we want to encounter the divine. We want to encounter God. And beauty has a way to do that, to communicate something of God to us.
Right. And we have these great stories. We've had students who have literally walked into the church and have said, I need to come back to the church. Or a student who came over because he heard the bells ringing in the bell tower. He kept hearing them ringing. And he finally said, I've got to go over there. You know, the bells doing what they are intended to do, to call people to church.
Real bells.
Real bells.
Not electronic bells,
Exactly.
real bells.
Yeah, Bishop blessed them on a very hot day.
Yeah.
Yes. And Mother wanted that too at the shrine. She had these beautiful bells too, and Bishop Foley blessed them. There's a very special blessing for protection against storms and calling people to prayer. What were some of the elements of that blessing?
Well, calling people to prayer, but also warding off evil, you know, and sounding the bell, the toll, the bells for, all kinds of reasons. And that's the history. Bells go way back, in history. And the beautiful thing about the Newman Center at the University of Nebraska is it's right in the middle of the campus. So we have a strong presence all over campus. And when the bell tower, I think the only thing higher than the bell tower is the football stadium.
Yeah,
And so people know we're there, and it's beautiful to hear the bells ring across the campus.
There's a permanence to that you're here to stay. The church is here to stay.
Right.
It's not just one of these
anywhere.
passing things like technology.
Right.
But at the same time, you're using the modern technologies, like you're talking about geothermal.
Oh yeah, we have this whole modern system. It's a modern building, even though it looks like a traditional structure, but we have a geothermal heating air system. We drilled 77 wells over 600 feet deep, 19 miles of pipe that heats and cools the building at a fraction of the cost of the old building, which is nice. It's handicap accessible. I wanted the building to be built such a way that any student who is in a wheelchair, whatever, they could go anywhere in the building that they wanted to go. So if they want to sing in choir, they can get on the elevator and they can go up across the second floor and zip right into the choir loft and sing with the choir. So we wanted it to be modern in that way, that it'd be accessible to our students and in every way that we could make it.
Now, I think one of the things that I was really impressed with about how you're inspiring vocations is what you're doing in your Catholic high schools. Talk about that, Bishop.
Well, one of the blessings of the Diocese of Lincoln is that all of our religion courses taught in all of our 6 high schools are taught by priests or sisters. And that's just sort of a given. And it's been there for a long time. We've got 14 priests on the faculty at our Central High School. So every priest knows that the first 5 years of his priesthood, he's teaching in the high school full time. And it's had a great effect on vocations because they see priests every day in our high schools. And a lot of our vocations have come out of our high schools. And a number of them have come out of the university. And with Father Matya being the vocation director as well as being the pastor of the Newman Center, it's a good fit because a lot of our students go through the university. And if they don't go into the seminary right out of high school, they maybe spend a couple years at the university. So a lot of our vocations have come through our education system.
And you have religious sisters teaching there as well, right? There's a community that was founded for teaching.
Right, we have a community of school sisters of Christ the King founded by Bishop Flavin in the 1970s, and a small community which continues to grow, and they teach and are administrators in a number of our elementary schools. And so we have sisters teaching in the elementary level as well as in the high school level.
And the Marian sisters are teaching as
The
well.
Marian sisters teach. It's another community of Franciscan sisters that teach as well and do parish work. And in fact, my administrator is a Marian sister. So, so we've been blessed in the Diocese of Lincoln with many vocations, which prompted me this year to release 2 of my priests to serve in poor dioceses. One I've released to serve in the Diocese of Gallup, New Mexico, and the other is going to Fairbanks, Alaska. I asked my priests, who wants to go to Fairbanks? I got a buddy who's a bishop up there now. He's asking for priests, and one of our priests, who was a real outdoorsman,
So he'd go.
he volunteered and said he'd go, so he's heading up to Nome in June.
That seems like such an effective way to have priests and religious interacting with the young people in high school and in college, that has this effect of, oh, this could be a possibility for me.
Right.
To actually meet and to talk with priests and religious and to understand their life a little better.
Yeah, it makes a big difference if they have access to them and can see them living their life and their vows.
And every day,
exposure to that, yeah.
they see him every day. You know, the priests and religious are sort of a normal part of the fabric of the culture, and especially for our Catholic high school students.
Now, we've talked about priestly vocations, religious life, but talk about also the impact that this is having on Catholic marriages and family life. You have, what, 54 marriages?
Yeah, our marriages
couples
at
you're
the Newman Center have
preparing?
gone up dramatically since we have the new church. I think we have 54 marriages scheduled for this year. And it's a great opportunity. You know, if you think about the times that a couple actually sits down with a priest and talks about their life, it's not a lot. I mean, and so it's a great opportunity to evangelize and to catechize and to teach them about marriage and all aspects of the faith, and to really win their hearts in a deeper way to Christ. And so we look at it as an opportunity. So we work really individually with our couples so we can have deeper conversations instead of group settings. And it's a big investment of time, but well worth it, because there's great stories of Catholic families being started and they get married with their feet on the ground in the right way. Yeah.
And as the Focus missionaries grow in being throughout the country, they're impacting the parishes that they're members of.
They
right?
are.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that Curtis Martin, the founder of Focus, is realizing now, that these Focus missionaries who've served 2, 3, 4 years, who are now getting married and getting real jobs, so to speak, and having children, they're moving into parishes. And I think he predicts, at least statistically, by the year 2020, there'll be 4 Focus missionaries in every parish in the country.
Wow.
And that's going to have a tremendous impact on evangelization and catechesis, because these Focus missionaries are trained and they've been out in the mission fields, and so what a blessing they will be to the parishes of our country.
Let's talk about the fraternities and sororities. Why is it important that you've wanted to enter into that life as well?
Well, that was a big part of the project. Was at the same time we were building the church, we built a fraternity, a Catholic fraternity, the Phi Kappa Theta. And it's a fraternity of men, which is across the country, but it's in the Greek system, you know. And so we thought that by, getting into the Greek system and evangelizing within, because a lot of leaders go through, the fraternity system, and we know the fraternity system is doesn't have the best reputation. And so we thought that, if we could, establish a fraternity where it could form men in leadership, men to be gentlemen, that would be a great blessing. And a lot of, we've got a lot of fruit coming out of this, the Phi Kappa Theta.
To follow up on that question, I really didn't want to start a fraternity. I was listening to the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at the university about a situation, an incident that took place on campus, and trying to address the situation, because they really do lead in the ways of like student government, philanthropy. Large percentage of our Greek population is there, and we weren't really impacting that population the way that I thought we should. And he said, why don't you start a fraternity that'll be an example to the others? And so we prayed about it. Bishop Russowitz gave me permission, which I didn't ever think would happen. And so we've had a lot of great marriages. 17 men out of that Catholic fraternity already, in the short time it's existed, have gone to the seminary.
Wow.
And so the first 2 are going to be ordained this year, deacons that have gone through. And so, and lots of great marriages, families formed out of that house as well.
And we have a sorority as well. We don't have a house yet, which is what we're hoping to build someday.
Right.
It's coming.
But it's coming. We've got how many girls that are?
43, I think.
43 that are, colonized into a sorority.
Wow.
But it's interesting to see the women on the campus. They like to spend time at the men's fraternity. In fact, they call it the Fratican because it's the Catholic fraternity. And but they like it because the men treat them like ladies, and they're well mannered and they're clean. and it's become a popular place on campus.
That's wonderful, the impact that you're having. Thank you for telling us the story. We're going to be taking a break here, and go online to check out the UNL Newman Center, St. Thomas Aquinas Church in Lincoln, Nebraska, at huskercatholic.com, facebook.com/huskercatholic also. So we're going to be back here in a moment to take your questions. So we invite you to come back after we take this break to ask your questions to Bishop Conley and Father Matya. Thank you. Well, we'd love to have you come and make a pilgrimage too. We've got some wonderful pilgrims here from New Mexico that took a 2-day bus trip to come all the way over here to visit EWTN. So we're glad that they're here tonight for the live show. We'd love for you to come and make a pilgrimage too, to attend one of the live shows here. We have some that are during the day, and then the evening show like this program, EWTN Live. And then there's a beautiful Shrine of the Blessed Sacrament where our pilgrims here will be going tomorrow. You have the opportunity to visit Mother's tomb, and just it's a beautiful place. We were talking about beauty and the architecture and how that inspires you. That's what you'll experience at the Shrine of the Blessed Sacrament. So if you're interested in making a pilgrimage, call our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966 or go to EWTN.com. Well, we have a caller, Kathy in Pennsylvania. Hello, Kathy. What is your question?
Hi, Father Joseph.
Yes.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question. I wanted to know if they can tell me if there is a correlation, like a connection between the increase of vocations that they're having in Lincoln and having the more orthodox teaching of their Catholic faith, such as no altar girls, and having the altar rails that they mentioned, and also, as well as the influence of the previous bishop, Bishop Brunsowitz,
Yes.
and, of course, the Fraternity of St. Peter in their diocese.
Yes, talk about that, Bishop Conley. What's
Sure.
been happening in the past before you were there, and
Well,
what's
I've
going
always,
on now?
I've always been very mindful of the fact that I'm walking in the footsteps of giants, because I've had my two most immediate predecessors, Bishop Fabian Bruskowitz, who was bishop in the Diocese of Lincoln for 20 years until 2012, and before him, Bishop Flavin, Bishop Glennon Flavin, who was bishop immediately after the Second Vatican Council during those turbulent years,
Yes.
all the way to 1993. So basically over 40 years of stellar Episcopal leadership, and that's what I inherited. And I know I am very blessed as a bishop, and I realize I'm very mindful of that. And the fruit of that fidelity, as the caller said, or that orthodoxy of two bishops who really understood what Episcopal leadership was and were very faithful to the church in the liturgy, in teaching, in Catholic education, and in seminary formation. we see the fruit of that because the Lincoln Diocese has not just experienced recently a surge in vocations.
Right.
It's been 20, 30, 40 years consistent vocations. I'll have ordained, in the last 24 months, I'll have ordained 17 new priests with one retirement. So that's a net gain of 16 priests. And the average age, I think, of our, now we'll have 142 active priests, and the average age is 44. Wow. And we used to have, I don't know if we still do, maybe Wichita, my home diocese, has overtaken us, but we did have the highest number of seminarians per Catholic in the country. And all of that is not a credit to me. I inherited that because of my predecessors who built a strong foundation. Caller mentioned the seminaries. We have 2 seminaries in the diocese. We have our own college seminary, St. Gregory the Great, which is a diocesan seminary, where we form our own men, but also 6 other sending dioceses. We also have the Fraternity of St. Peter's North American Seminary. We have over 80 seminarians there at Our Lady of Guadalupe Seminary. So we've been blessed to have the Fraternity of St. Peter in our diocese, and we're doing more and more mutual, we have competitions, holy competitions, soccer games, you know, and we go to each other's seminary on feast days. So there's a good collaboration between the Fraternity of St. Peter and the diocesan priests. But the caller is right. It's really, I think, the fruit of fidelity to the church and a clear understanding of Episcopal leadership.
Tell us about the priest baseball game, too, that you're going to take part in next time, hopefully, right?
Right. This just started last year by our radio station, Spirit Catholic Radio, which carries EWTN and programming. And so we have the Collar Series, where the priests of the Diocese of Lincoln challenged the priests of the Archdiocese of Omaha to a softball game.
Okay.
And last year was the inaugural event, and we had over 8,000 people come to that game. And I wasn't able to be there. I was traveling. Father Matya, I don't think was there either, but I'm going to be there this year and participate in that. But it's a wonderful, this was put on by the radio station, which Catholic radio in Nebraska has really flourished. And it's really become a powerful tool of evangelization for all 3 of us bishops in Nebraska. The Archbishop in Omaha and Archbishop Lucas and Bishop Hannafelt in Grand Island, myself, we're always asked to be on the radio, and it reaches all of our households all across the state.
So you're taking advantage of that opportunity to speak to your people through Catholic radio.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bishop Conley, I'm sure our friends in Omaha want everybody to know that the Lincoln priests won that first game.
Well, that's true. That's true. We did win that game, so we'll see.
Did you play?
I was in St. Louis. I was at a conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have a studio question next. Hello, you're one of the people from New Mexico.
Yes, I'm Clara Villarreal from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I have a granddaughter at New Mexico State University who is very involved in the Newman Center there. In fact, she went to a National Focus convention last year. I don't remember what state it was, but anyway, my question was not regarding Focus, but about she got her own parents to go talk to several NMSU students to go talk to them about theology of the body.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what your feeling is about teaching college students about theology of the body.
It's important because our culture gives them a totally misguided notion of human sexuality. And so it is important that we teach our students what that really should look like.
Right.
And I know we have one of our priests in our diocese, Father Conley, spends a lot of time working in this, doing presentations, and he's been to our center several times to talk about this. And also giving them examples of good, wonderful married couples and families. And so we'll have married couples come in from time to time and speak and talk about the vocation of marriage and what that really looks like. And so, yes, absolutely, it's important to give that example to them.
And again, it's beauty. It's the beauty of human sexuality, the beauty of God's gift of marriage and love and family that is attractive. And we don't see that, you know, and I think young people, when they do see it, especially when, you know, we unpack the beautiful teaching of John Paul II and the theology of the body, it resonates with them, and they said,
Yeah.
this is what human sexuality is all about. This is what love is all about.
Yeah.
You know, it has that beautiful attraction, and so it's very, very much part of the catechesis and teaching of the Newman Center.
There was a family that I'm friends with in Hanceville, and they have a number of children, and the oldest girl, Philomena, had made her first Holy Communion, and we were at this restaurant celebrating, and this older couple came up and they said, thank you, because they said, we never see this anymore. You know, it was just a Catholic family. They were dressed nicely for the celebration that they had of the First Holy Communion, and they were well behaved for the most part,
Yeah.
you know, as children are. But there's something beautiful about Catholic marriage and family life
Yes.
when it's lived,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's attractive.
It is attractive. So we try to let our students be able to see that in lots of different ways through our young alumni married couples, and it's fun to have events where all their children are running around and our students can see what that looks like. And so,
Tell us a little about the social events too that you have with the students. Obviously, young people are looking for social interaction too in healthy ways. How do you fill that need?
we try to do that because, you know, again, our culture presents a lot of social situations for college students that are very unhealthy,
Yeah.
and so they want to socialize. Who wants to spend their time alone in their dorm room?
Right.
They want to interact with other students, and so, for example, on Thursday nights, which is really the start of the weekend for college students, you know, after our 10 p.m. Mass, we have community night where students come and they hang out after Mass, and they'll do different events. They might have music, they might have dancing, they might have games, they have different food that they serve. We do these events pretty regularly so to give them those opportunities to socialize with each other and to bring others into those social circles as well. And we really start at the beginning of the year. We do them repeatedly. For the first 2 weeks of school, we're doing a lot of events because especially if you watch new students to campus, they're looking for somewhere to
Right.
land, you know, and by the end of the second week, they've landed somewhere.
You've got a little window of time to get them connected.
We're trying to really capture their hearts right away in the
As
beginning.
soon as they come,
As soon as they
arrive, to
As
invite
soon as
them.
they come.
Another aspect that we're hoping as we establish this Newman Institute for Catholic Thought and Culture is to develop a culture. You know, already there is a community, but then to build upon that and offer cultural experiences, traveling abroad, which we already have an opportunity to travel to Europe, to Rome on these pilgrimages, but also even within Nebraska to visit the home of Willa Cather, one of our most famous authors,
Okay.
and to really kind of create a culture among the community of the Newman Center so that they can not only build friendships, healthy friendships, but friendships that are steeped in the great things of our faith, you know, and it naturally kind of develops. But with this Newman Institute, we're hoping that we'll even be doing that in a better way.
Wonderful. Well, we have another caller, Thomas in Tennessee. Hello, Thomas. What is your question?
Hello, Father Wolf. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. I have two questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think His Excellency just answered the second question, but let me ask the first. I'm a little confused, and I'm hoping, Your Excellency, you could help me out. When you talk about the Newman Center today in your homily on EWTN, you spoke of Jack Sullivan's miracle and how it contributed to the beatification of Cardinal John Henry Newman. Well, I guess I was under the impression the Newman Centers were named after the Redemptorist bishop from Philadelphia from 1852 to 1860, who was John Newman. Could you please clarify that for me?
No, the movement of Newman Centers, which would be Catholic college campus centers on public university campuses, came from Blessed John Henry Newman, the 19th century Anglican convert. John Newman, the Archbishop of Philadelphia, was responsible for establishing the Catholic school system.
Yes.
But Newman, who was an Oxford scholar and who converted when he was at Oxford, saw a need for Catholic presence on public universities. And so that's why, you know, he is the patron saint, you might say, or the patron blessed of Catholic campus centers. And there's been a strong Newman Center movement for 50, 75 years because of Newman's desire to want to have something for Catholic students at public universities.
So he himself was a brilliant scholar, a brilliant man. He wrote a book on universities.
He did.
Too,
He wrote.
right?
He was asked to establish the first Catholic university in Ireland, and he wrote a series of lectures called "The Idea of a University."
Yes.
And that has become sort of the Magna Carta for Catholic education and education in general.
Wow.
Part of the lecture series we're going to have with the Institute in the fall, Father Ian Carr is going to come and talk about that with the students in the community about Newman's idea of a university. So it'll be fun to have him come.
Wonderful.
That's another thing we sponsor is the lecture series with the Newman Institute.
We have a caller from Sri Lanka. Hello, Asiri.
Hello, Your Excellency and Father Matya. I was a foreign student back 25 years ago and attended Wichita State. And the Newman Center played a significant major part in my life, not only to complete my education items, but also to integrate me into society. So my question is, to fulfill Cardinal Newman's vision and the possibility of extending Newman Centers to all cities or major or at a diocesan level to establish a Newman Center at many campuses as possible. Is there the limitations? Are there limitations or the feasibility of it?
Not at all, and it's good to hear your voice, Asiri. He's a former student of mine at Wichita State University. Yeah, we go way back to my years at Wichita State in the 1990s. Now he's an engineer at Cessna and very successful, raising a family in Wichita. But there's no, in fact, I don't think there's any limitation. I would like to see, something like the University of Nebraska Newman Center on every college campus in the country, because that's, as we said before, 90% of college-age Catholics are at our public institutions for whatever reason. I mean, it's cost could be the reason why they're there, or degrees that are offered that are not offered at smaller Catholic colleges. But already there are many wonderful Newman centers and Catholic campus centers. But I think that there's no limitation in having something on every campus.
May their tribe increase, right?
That's
we would
right.
like to see that happen.
We just have to make the investment.
That's right, we do, and we have to put our resources there, and bishops have to put their priests there to be able to build these up. I know Curtis Martin would like to have focus missionaries on every campus in the country.
And it's so crucial, isn't it? Like you were saying earlier, it's so crucial that the church is there because we're losing so many of our young people.
It's the next generation. It's the next generation, and if we don't rescue this generation now, we're going to lose them.
Yeah. We have another caller, Sebastian in Massachusetts. Hello, Sebastian.
Hello, Father. Thank you very much for taking my call.
And what's your question?
Yes, I have a comment and probably part of a question. I came into watching the show. They were talking about the beauty of the architectural beauty of the churches, and how do you capture the young youth? Well, beauty is caught, through the architectural by the grace of God. Mother Angelica understood this beauty. She built this beautiful church, She understood the beauty of God, and she expressed that through great workers, which are far and few today. So I'm hoping that, this is more addressed out there, to raise these beautiful churches, because, over here in Boston, they've been closing them down, and it was so beautiful. Some of these churches and selling them off. It's really heartbreaking, and to see, I don't even know if you can replace some of these architecturals today. So that was my comment. I hope this could be, implicated out there more, and because, this is how you catch the senses, because we have 5 senses, and the senses have to be, captured first, to the viewer. Touch, smell, see, hear, and look. This riches, the beauty of God in the liturgy of the church. And I just wanted to express that to the panel.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you.
The viewers and your audience.
Bishop, any
Well,
thoughts
it's
on
very
that?
Thomistic. All knowledge comes through the senses is absolutely true. And we are an incarnational people and an incarnational church. So what we see and taste and hear through the beautiful liturgy, through architecture, all has an important impact on our souls. So again, putting our resources, our energy, our time into building beautiful churches. And I think that church architecture has really improved in recent times. I know in the Diocese of Lincoln, a lot of the younger priests have restored a lot of our churches that were, as I said, recavated after the Second Vatican Council for whatever reasons, and that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
But the beauty of these churches that are being restored, and unfortunately, I know in the big cities like Boston and New York and places like that, churches have closed, but the good thing is that we're retrieving a lot of the beautiful art and reintroducing it into other churches.
Yes.
And so we're recycling the beauty of those churches.
Yes.
But I do see an improvement in church architecture, and there's many new young architects, like the one that worked on the Newman Center, that understand this.
Beautiful. We have another caller, Richard in New Jersey. Hello, Richard. What's your question?
I have a comment. Am I on the air?
Yes, you can go ahead, Richard.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to mention to the bishop that on at least 2 occasions we happened to be sitting next to a group of students from Lincoln, Nebraska, and we were really impressed with this group of students. And I just wanted to convey to the bishop that what he's doing out there is definitely having an effect. There was something that came through these students that we just happened to be sitting near.
Thank you very much. That's a great compliment. It's always good to hear good news. And Father Matya is the one who's probably responsible for that, and as being the chaplain of the Newman Center. But that's great to hear. Thank you very much.
And we were talking earlier about the quality of young men entering the seminary, that they really have to have, as I said last week with Anne, it's a choice that they make against the culture, that you have all of this media barrage against the church in so many ways. They really have to be courageous men who are making this choice for God, no matter what, and they still feel this strong calling from God.
Absolutely. I think that the motives have been purified since the sexual abuse scandal, so that men now who are looking at the priesthood, they realize they're going into the priesthood at a time when society looks upon the priesthood in a negative way. So their motivation, their desire, their motives are really, I think, strong. And I've noticed that in our men. And the question of, we were talking about this, the question of orthodoxy. I mean, when I was going through the seminary, we were a mixed bag, by being faithful to the church. But now it's almost 100%. I mean, I very rarely run into any seminarian or young priest that, doesn't embrace the fullness of the Catholic Church and Humanae Vitae and the Eucharist, everything.
They don't want a watered down faith. You can't give yourself to something halfway,
No.
right? It's got to be a total.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
It doesn't
all
work.
Young
in.
people aren't going to do that. They're not going to give their life to something that's watered down and half-truth.
They want to be all in.
Yeah.
All in and challenged to be something greater.
And
something
make
great.
a sacrifice of their lives.
That's what we're called to. Now, Father Matya, if people want to learn more about the Newman Center, or if they want to help build this sorority house that you're trying to construct, what are ways that they can learn more and
So we have a great website, I think they've been running it on the show, called huskercatholic.com. In fact, our students run around campus and they wear those shirts that say Husker Catholic. And so we're kind of spreading ourselves over campus, and it's an easy site to go to. All kinds of information there about our programs, our ministries, ways that people can help and assist us. And if somebody wants to know how they can help, if they send in an inquiry about that, we're going to respond.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
And that's where young men and women who are interested could also find out more information if they were interested in coming to the University of Nebraska.
Exactly. So they can also just Google UNL Newman Center, and they'll come up with a student-oriented site that, for the students.
Any closing comments you'd like to make as we come to the end of the show?
Just that it's been a great pleasure to be on the show, and I hope that by telling the great story of the Newman Center, which is a beautiful story, that this can be replicated in other places.
Yes.
And we're asking people to help us to build this program that we have, and we think that that's going to have a national impact all over the country, as we saw from focus missionaries who have gone out from the Newman Center across the country. I think by supporting the Newman Center at the University of Nebraska, we have a national impact.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for coming down. We enjoyed having you for Mother's monthly memorial mass this morning.
It's a great honor.
And
great
Father
honor.
Matya, good to catch up with you again. I
Yeah,
haven't
after
seen
all
you
these
since
years.
seminary.
It's great to see you again. It's great to be able to spend the day with you today.
So we wish you the best, and we pray that your tribe will increase too, that these Newman centers will be in other places and others will take the look at the success story here and replicate it in other places. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we know that this network is brought to you, as Mother often said, by you. So thank you for all of your support over the years of keeping us going now, almost 35 years. We're in our 35th year, thanks to your providence. And please help this network to keep going. And Bishop, would you give us a blessing?
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Now and forever.
Our help is in the name of the Lord,
Who made heaven and earth.
And may the blessing of Almighty God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit descend upon you and remain with you forever.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.